Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a look at, sorry about that. We're going to take a look at solving some simple trigonometric equations. These are some of the easiest ones. We're going to get into tougher ones later. We're going to be using our unit circle for these, so keep your unit circle handy. Let's take a look at the directions. Here it says solve for the variable if theta is between 0 degrees and 360 degrees, including 0 and 360 in this case, and if theta is between 0 and 2 pi, and let's put in these equal signs, so including 0 and 2 pi in radians. Use your unit circle, of course. Let's take a look at this first example. Here we want to solve for theta. They tell us that sine theta equals a half. So what does that mean? Well, if we think about what we know about the unit circle, we know that our sine values are the second values inside our parentheses. So this, for instance, is going to be a sine value right here. That's going to be a sine value. The first values, of course, are what values? Going to be cosine values. So let's look here. Because they say sine theta equals 0, they're basically referring to the fact that inside the parentheses, the second number is going to be 0. Is going to be a half. Because if sine theta equals a half, the second number is going to be a half. So let's take a look at our unit circle. Where's the second number going to be a half? Well, looking here, we can see that our second number is a half right here at that spot. Here it's going to be square root of 2 over 2, square root of 3 over 2, and here's another spot. Second number is a half, isn't it? And then if we keep looking, this is negative a half, so that doesn't count. And that's negative a half. So we actually have two answers, pi over 6 for one of them, 5 pi over 6 for the other. And those would be the only two values that are between 0 and 2 pi. And so let's go ahead and write that down. We can say that theta is basically going to be equal to our pi over 6 and 5 pi over 6. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I want you to go ahead and try problem number 2. Do it similarly. So pause the video, give that a try. Okay, let's take a look at problem number 2. For problem number 2, it says cosine theta equals square root of 3 over 2, and hopefully for your answer, you ended up getting pi over 6 and 11 pi over 6. Let's take a look at this problem. When they're asking for cosine of theta, what they're referring to, of course, is our first number in parentheses. So let's be very clear here. We got the first number in parentheses is going to be square root of 3 over 2. So as we look at our parentheses, the first number right here, square root of 3 over 2, so that's going to be an answer. Where else is the first number? That's negative, so it doesn't count. That's negative. And then right here, square root of 3 over 2. Oops, sorry about that. And so these are the two values, pi over 6 and 11 pi over 6. Let's go ahead and write that down. We can say that theta right here equals pi over 6 and 11 pi over 6. And those would be the only two values between 0 and 2 pi that end up working. Let's go ahead and move on. Number 3. Number 3 is a little bit different because in number 3, what we have is something that doesn't exactly look like numbers 1 and 2. In problems 1 and 2, what we had was something a little bit on the easier side where our trig function was by itself on the left of the equals. Sine by itself. Cosine by itself on the left of the equals. But here we don't have cosine by itself on the left of the equals. We've got this factor of 2 here. We've also have this plus square root of 2 at the end. And so in general, what are the steps when the problems get just a little bit harder? Well, let's write this out. What we want to do, first of all, when the problems get a little bit harder, is we want to, first of all, solve for the trig function. Let's go ahead and write that down here. Solve for the trig function. After we've solved for the trig function, then we can use our unit circle like we did up here in problems 1 and 2. So use the unit circle. So, keeping those steps in mind, let's try problem number 3. I'm going to get the cosine by itself. Because this equation right here looks a lot like 2x plus square root of 2 equals 0, where the x is like the cosine theta here. X matches up with that. To solve this equation for x, we would first get rid of the plus square root of 2. So we're going to do this one similarly. We're going to go ahead and subtract square root of 2 from both sides. And then we're going to get 2 cosine theta equals negative square root of 2. Then our next step, let's go ahead and divide by 2 on both sides. We're going to get cosine theta equals negative square root of 2 over 2. Now our cosine theta is all by itself, so we can go to step 2 and use our unit circle. Where's our cosine theta negative square root of 2 over 2? Well, as we take a look up here at the unit circle carefully, we can see that it's going to be right here at 3 pi over 4 and right here at 5 pi over 4. So our final answers right here are going to end up being theta is equal to 3 pi over 4 and 5 pi over 4. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, here's what I want to have you do. We're going to do one more of these problems. I want you to try number 4 on your own. And then we'll go through that. Here we go, number 4. So pause the video, give that a try. Okay, let's go through problem number 4. Problem number 4, similar to number 3, we're going to want to solve for our trig function first. So let's add 1 to both sides. Then we can go ahead and divide through by square root of 3, both sides. And we'll end up finding that we get tan theta is equal to 1 over square root of 3. Now, how do we find those values of theta on our unit circle? Well, we need to know our tangent values to do that. And to know our tangent values, basically what we need to do. So we need to get the corresponding values up here for sine over cosine, etc. So the tangent value here, for instance, at 0 degrees or 0 radians is going to be 0 divided by 1, which is 0. I'll put that in a circle. There's our tan value. Here we have a half over square root of 3 over 2. And anytime that we've done this in class, what we've done is we've taken a half divided by square root of 3 over 2 this way. And instead of dividing, we've multiplied by the reciprocal. And we know how to do that. We've done that plenty of times. This will end up here being 1 over square root of 3. And we can work our way around the unit circle like that to get these values of the tangent. Here tan is going to be 1. Here tangent is going to be square root of 3. Here the tangent's going to be, well, no solution there because you can't divide by 0. And we talked about the fact that, for instance, at pi over 3, where the tan is square root of 3, if you go directly across at 4 pi over 3, it'll be the same value. So we can go ahead and basically use that to help fill in values around our unit circle. All right, so going to our problem here, we have tangent is equal to 1 over square root of 3. Where's that going to be? Well, when we take a look up here, we have 1 over square root of 3 in that spot. So that's going to be at pi over 6. So let's write that here. We can say that theta equals pi over 6 is one answer. But if we go directly across on the unit circle, we'll find the other value, where the tan equals 1 over square root of 3, and that will be at 7 pi over 6 here. So let's fill this in, 7 pi over 6. And that's it. Why don't we stop right there, ladies and gentlemen? Hopefully that helps a little bit. Of course, rewatch this video. If you think that's going to be helpful, pause the problems, try them again. And then, ladies and gentlemen, that should get us set with some very simple trig equations. We're going to take a look at some much more challenging ones, including quadratic ones and ones where the values on the right side are not the simple fractions that we're familiar with from the unit circle. We'll take a look at that later. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.